I never thought a single touch could shatter my entire world. Elliot Kane, my boss, the coldest man I'd ever known, stood so close today that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Your collar is crooked," he said, and his voice felt like it reached into my chest and squeezed my heart. I stood there in the middle of the office, surrounded by colleagues buried in their work. But for me there was only him. Elliot, tall in his perfectly tailored gray suit, those piercing blue eyes locked onto mine. He raised his hand slowly, deliberately. My heart pounded so violently I was certain everyone could hear it echoing through the room. His fingers reached my shirt collar. They adjusted the fabric with careful precision, and in that single second, time ceased to exist. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was feel his proximity, his warmth, the electricity that shot through me at his touch. "There. Perfect," he said, stepping back as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. But for me, everything had changed. My hands trembled at my sides. Heat flushed across my cheeks. And worst of all, I knew with absolute certainty that this wasn't just a crush anymore. This was something else. Something terrifying. Elliot never touches anyone. Everyone in the office knows this. He avoids handshakes, obsesses over personal space, and maintains an invisible barrier between himself and the rest of the world. So why today? Why me? The question consumed me throughout the entire day. During meetings, I found myself staring at him instead of the presentation slides. During lunch break, I barely tasted my food, and now, standing outside his office with a stack of files clutched against my chest, I still couldn't shake the feeling of his fingers on my collar. My hand hovered near the door, ready to knock, but courage failed me. "Come in, Cassian," his voice called from inside. My name. He said my name with such unexpected softness, as if I wasn't just another employee, another faceless worker in his department. I pushed the door open and entered. He sat at his desk reviewing documents, reading glasses perched on his nose, completely absorbed in concentration. When he noticed me, he removed the glasses with one smooth motion. "Put them here," he said, tapping the surface of his desk. I moved forward. As I set down the files, my gaze drifted to his hands, the same hands that had touched my collar just hours ago. My heart ached with a longing I couldn't name. "Cassian?" I jerked my head up. He was studying me intently, eyebrows raised in question. "Something on your mind?" he asked, and I felt as though he was searching for something hidden in my eyes. My throat went dry. "No, sir." His eyes narrowed slightly. Then slowly he rose from his chair. He approached me close, far too close. My breathing stopped altogether. "You've been distracted all day," he whispered, and there was something weighted in his tone that made my skin prickle. "What's going on?" My heart screamed. "You. Your touch. Your scent. Everything about you." But I simply shook my head. "Nothing." He smiled. Actually smiled. Elliot Kane, the man who never showed emotion, curved his lips upward, and I felt like I was witnessing the most dangerous thing I'd ever seen. "Don't lie to me, Cassian," he said softly. "Your eyes tell me everything." Then he returned to his chair as if he hadn't just turned my entire existence upside down, as if he hadn't just acknowledged that he could read me like an open book. I left his office with my hands still shaking, because now I knew with absolute certainty this wasn't just happening to me. Something was stirring in him too, and that was the most frightening part of all. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I tried to focus on spreadsheets and emails, but my mind kept replaying that moment. The way his fingers felt against my neck, the intensity in his eyes when he looked at me, the subtle change in his voice when he said my name. Around 4 o'clock, I went to the break room for coffee, anything to clear my head. My colleague Maria was there, chatting about her weekend plans. "You okay, Cassian?" she asked suddenly. "You look flushed." "Just tired," I lied, turning away to hide my face. "Well, don't work too hard. Kane might be a slave driver, but you need to take care of yourself." I nodded absently, stirring sugar into my coffee that I didn't even want. If only she knew. If only anyone knew that the slave driver boss had just completely unraveled me with a single simple gesture. When I returned to my desk, there was a sticky note on my computer monitor. My heart stopped. "See me before you leave today. Eek." His handwriting, direct and precise, just like everything about him. The hours until end of day felt like torture. Every time I glanced at the clock, only minutes had passed. My stomach twisted with anxiety and anticipation. What did he want? Was this about work? Or was it about that moment? Finally, mercifully, 5:30 arrived. Most of the office had already emptied out, people eager to start their weekend. I gathered my courage and walked to Elliot's door. This time I knocked. Enter. He was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the city skyline. He didn't turn around when I came in. Close the door, he said quietly. I did, my pulse racing. Lock it. My hand froze on the doorknob. Sir, just do it, Cassian. I turned the lock with trembling fingers. The click seemed impossibly loud in the silence. Finally, he turned to face me. The evening light cast shadows across his features, making him look almost vulnerable. I need to ask you something, he began, his voice careful and measured, and I need you to be completely honest with me. I nodded, unable to form words. This morning when I fixed your collar, he paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. The way you looked at me, the way you've been looking at me for months now. I need to know if I'm imagining things. My world tilted on its axis. What are you asking? I managed to whisper. He crossed the space between us in 3 strides. Now we stood barely a foot apart, close enough that I could see the storm brewing in his blue eyes. I'm asking, he said, his voice dropping to barely above a breath. If you feel this too. This, whatever this is between us. The truth sat on my tongue, heavy and dangerous. One word could change everything. Could destroy everything. But as I looked into his eyes, saw the same fear, the same desperate hope that I felt. I knew I couldn't lie. Yes. I breathed. God, yes. I feel it too. Something shifted in his expression. Relief. Terror. Desire. All at once. Then we have a problem. He said. I know, because I'm your boss. I know, and this could ruin both our careers. I know. He reached up slowly, giving me time to pull away. His palm cupped my cheek, warm and solid and real. But I don't think I can stop, he whispered. My eyes closed involuntarily, leaning into his touch. Neither can I. And in that moment, standing in his locked office as the sun set over the city, we both knew there was no going back from this. 2 days passed after that evening in Elliot's office, and he hadn't spoken to me beyond necessary work communications. In meetings, he was his usual cold, professional self. In the hallways, he barely acknowledged my presence. Yet I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. His gaze would linger for just a moment too long before he'd snap his attention elsewhere. It was torture. Exquisite, maddening torture. We'd admitted something monumental to each other. Something that couldn't be unsaid. Yet here we were, pretending it never happened. Playing our roles. Boss and employee. Nothing more. Except everything had changed. Friday afternoon arrived with a restless energy in the office. People were making weekend plans, their voices carrying across the cubicles with light-hearted banter. I sat at my desk, trying to concentrate on quarterly reports, but the numbers blurred together. All I could think about was Elliot, the warmth of his hand on my face, the vulnerability in his voice when he'd confessed he couldn't stop whatever this was. Cassian, conference room. Now. I looked up sharply. Elliot stood beside my desk, hands buried in his pockets, his expression impossible to read. Right now? I asked, surprised by the sudden summons. Yes. Now. He turned and walked away without waiting for my response. My heart began its familiar racing. The conference room? Just the two of us? This wasn't normal protocol. I followed him down the corridor, my mind spinning with possibilities. When I entered the room, he closed the door behind me. The soft click echoed in the empty space. Then he locked it. My breathing quickened despite my best efforts to stay calm. Sit, he commanded, gesturing to one of the chairs. I sat, but he remained standing. He paced in front of me like a caged animal, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair, the first time I'd ever seen him look disheveled. Do you know why I asked you here? He finally said, stopping to face me. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. He exhaled slowly, deliberately. Because I've been going insane. These past 2 days, trying to act normal around you, trying to pretend that conversation never happened. It's been hell. My eyes widened. I hadn't expected him to be so direct. Cassian, he continued, and the way he said my name sent shivers down my spine. I need to know something, and I need complete honesty. No workplace politics. No fear of consequences. Just truth. I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs. Do you have romantic feelings for me? The floor seemed to drop out from beneath me. This was real. This was actually happening. My tongue felt thick and clumsy in my mouth. Don't call me sir right now. He cut me off, frustration creeping into his tone. This isn't about hierarchy. This is me, Elliot, asking you, Cassian. That's all. Just two people. I need an answer. I looked into his eyes and saw something I'd never seen before. Desperation. Raw, unfiltered need for the truth. The composed, untouchable boss was gone, replaced by a man who looked like he was barely holding himself together. My heart wanted to scream. Yes, I've been in love with you since the first day I walked into this office. But my mind countered, don't say it. This is your livelihood, your career, everything you've worked for. I started, then stopped, the words lodging in my throat. Elliot stepped closer and gently grasped my wrist. His touch sent electricity coursing through me, just like it had when he'd fixed my collar. Cassian, please, he whispered. I'm losing my mind here. Tears pricked at my eyes. I'd never imagined he'd be this open, this vulnerable with me. Elliot, I said his first name aloud for the very first time, and he visibly softened at the sound. Yes, he breathed. Like that. Just like that. I stood up, bringing us face to face with barely any space between our bodies. I could feel the heat emanating from him, smell his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice cracking with emotion. So am I, he confessed. But I can't keep fighting this anymore. His hand moved from my wrist to my face, cupping my jaw with infinite tenderness. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I felt like I was drowning in the best possible way. Tell me what's in your heart, he urged softly. Please, I'm begging you. I closed my eyes, gathering every ounce of courage I possessed. When I opened them again, I met his gaze directly. Yes, I said, my voice steadier now. I have feelings for you, strong ones. And it terrifies me, because I know how wrong this is. You're my superior. I'm your subordinate. But I can't help it. Ever since you touched my collar, I haven't been able to think about anything else. Silence filled the space between us. Elliot didn't move, didn't speak. Then he took my hand and placed it flat against his chest. Beneath my palm, I felt his heart thundering just as wildly as mine. Feel that? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. That only happens with you. Only. In that instant I understood. I wasn't alone in this free fall. We were both plummeting towards something dangerous and inevitable. What do we do now? I whispered. He let out a short, humorless laugh. I have no idea. I've never felt this way about anyone, Cassian, and certainly never about someone I work with. This goes against every professional principle I have. Mine too, I agree. But I can't ignore it anymore, he continued. I can't pretend you're just another employee. I can't walk past your desk without wanting to stop and talk to you about something other than work. I can't attend meetings without finding myself watching you instead of listening to presentations. His confession made my chest ache with a bittersweet mixture of joy and fear. So what do we do? I asked again, desperate for answers. Elliot's jaw clenched as he considered. We have to be smart about this. Careful. If anyone finds out, it won't just be uncomfortable, it could destroy both our careers. Mine especially, since I'm in the position of power. I understand, I said, though my heart sank at the reality of what he was saying. But, he added, his thumb still caressing my cheek, I also can't walk away from this. From you. I'm not strong enough. Neither am I confessed. He smiled then, a real genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Then we figure this out. Together. Carefully. But together. I nodded, unable to stop my own smile from forming. Can I? He left the question unfinished, but I knew what he was asking. Yes. I breathed. Elliot leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to change my mind. But I didn't. I couldn't. When his lips finally met mine, it was gentle and questioning, as if he was afraid I might break. I responded by gripping his shirt, pulling him closer, answering his question with action instead of words. When we broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. We should probably establish some ground rules, he said, though his hand hadn't left my face. Probably, I agreed, dizzy from the kiss. But right now I just want to stand here with you for another minute. Just one more minute, I echoed. We stood there in the conference room, foreheads touching, breathing each other's air, knowing that we'd just stepped over a line we could never uncross. The future was uncertain and filled with potential disaster. But in that moment, it felt absolutely right. The weekend stretched endlessly before me. Saturday and Sunday passed in a haze of overthinking every moment from Friday's conference room confession. His words echoed in my mind on repeat. That only happens with you. Monday morning arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. I dressed with extra care, second-guessing every choice. Would things be different now? Would he regret everything we'd said? When I walked into the office, Elliot was already at his desk, punctual as always. I passed his office door and he glanced up. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. His expression was unreadable, but there was a slight tension in his jaw that told me he was just as nervous as I was. "Good morning, sir," I said, keeping my voice professionally neutral. He gave me a curt nod. Nothing more. And so it began. The excruciating dance of pretending. We were back to playing our roles, but now I knew what his lips tasted like. Now I knew the sound he made when I touched him. The disconnect between our public faces and private truth was suffocating. Throughout the morning I felt his gaze on me multiple times. Whenever I looked up, he'd already turned away, but the air still hummed with tension. During the 10 o'clock meeting, he sat at the head of the conference table, leading the discussion about quarterly projections. His voice was steady and authoritative, but twice he stumbled over words while looking in my direction. Lunch break couldn't come fast enough. I headed to the break room, desperate for coffee and a moment to collect myself. I was stirring cream into my cup when I sensed him enter. The room suddenly felt smaller. "We need to talk," Elliot said without preamble. He kept his voice low, aware that anyone could walk in. "Here?" I glanced toward the door nervously. "No. Tonight, my place." My hand stilled mid-stir. "Elliot, I know what it means," he interrupted quietly. "I'm not asking lightly. But if we're going to figure this out, we need privacy. Real privacy. Not stolen moments in locked conference rooms." He was right, of course. But going to his apartment felt like crossing yet another line. One we wouldn't be able to uncross. "What time?" I heard myself say. 7. "I'll text you the address." He picked up his coffee and left before anyone else entered, leaving me standing there with my heart in my throat. That evening, I stood outside Elliot's apartment building, my hands clammy with nervous sweat. This was wrong on so many levels. Professionally, ethically, potentially, legally. Yet when he opened the door wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt instead of his usual suit, looking more human than I'd ever seen him, all my reservations melted away. "Come in," he said, stepping aside with a genuine smile, not the polite corporate mask he wore at work. His apartment matched him perfectly, minimalist, organized, but with subtle touches of warmth. Books lined one wall. A single piece of abstract art hung above a comfortable-looking couch. Nothing ostentatious. Everything intentional. "Something to drink?" he offered, gesturing toward the kitchen. "Water would be good," I managed, my throat suddenly parched. He returned moments later with 2 glasses. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, close but maintaining a careful distance that felt both respectful and agonizing. "Cassian," he began, setting his glass on the coffee table, "I want to be completely transparent with you. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, if you think this is a mistake, you can leave. No hard feelings. No consequences at work. I promise." I studied his face, the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability in the set of his shoulders. This was the real Elliot, stripped of corporate armor. "And if I stay?" I asked, daring to hope. His expression softened. "Then we figure this out. Carefully, intelligently, because I'm not willing to risk your career or your reputation. But I also," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "I also can't pretend anymore. Not after Friday. What exactly are we agreeing to?" I needed clarity, needed to understand what this meant. "At the office, everything stays professional," he said firmly. "Distant, even. No favoritism, No special treatment. Nothing that could raise suspicions. But here, in private, he trailed off, his gaze intensifying. Here we can be honest. Here we can explore whatever this is between us. It was a risky plan. Dangerous, even. But maybe it could work. Okay, I agreed. But I have a condition too. His eyebrow arched. Go ahead. If I ever feel like this is becoming too much, or if there's even a hint that someone at work suspects something, we stop. Immediately. No arguments. Elliot nodded solemnly. Agreed. He extended his hand for a shake, a formal gesture that felt absurdly businesslike. Given the circumstances, I took it, and the moment our palms connected, everything changed. His fingers laced through mine, and suddenly we weren't sealing a business arrangement. We were holding hands. I've wanted to do this properly for so long, he admitted, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. To look at you without having to pretend I'm just evaluating your work performance. I moved closer, drawn by a force I couldn't resist. What else have you wanted to do? His free hand rose to my face, fingers threading into my hair. This, he whispered, to touch you without worrying who's watching. The kiss was different from Friday's. Less desperate, more exploratory. He took his time learning the shape of my mouth, the way I responded to gentle pressure versus firm. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. Stay for dinner, he said against my lips. Please, let's just be normal for one evening. Two people getting to know each other. No offices, no hierarchy. Just us. I'd like that, I whispered back. We spent the next few hours doing exactly that, being normal. He cooked pasta while I chopped vegetables, and we talked about everything except work. His childhood in Boston, my obsession with obscure indie films, his secret love of terrible reality TV, my failed attempts at learning guitar. By the time we finished eating, the tension that had marked our every interaction at the office had transformed into something else. Comfort, ease, the beginning of real intimacy. I should probably go, I said reluctantly as the clock approached 11. Early meeting tomorrow. I know, Elliot agreed. But he didn't move from where he sat beside me on the couch, our shoulders touching. This is going to be harder than we thought, isn't it? I asked. Pretending at work after this. Yes, he admitted. Much harder, but also necessary. He turned to face me fully. Cassian, I want you to understand something. What happened tonight? This isn't just physical attraction. I genuinely enjoy your company. I want to know everything about you, and that scares me more than anything. Why does it scare you? Because it means this isn't just a fling I can walk away from if things get complicated. This feels like the beginning of something real. My heart swelled at his words. For me too. He kissed me again, soft and sweet and full of promise. When he finally walked me to the door, his hand lingered on my arm. Text me when you get home safe, he said. I will. And Cassian? He caught my hand before I could leave. Tomorrow at work I'm going to have to be cold and professional again. But remember, it's not real. This is real. I squeezed his hand. I'll remember. As I drove home through the empty streets, I knew we'd just made everything infinitely more complicated. Monday morning would require Oscar-worthy performances from both of us. But as I touched my lips still tingling from his kisses, I couldn't bring myself to regret a single moment. Tuesday morning felt different. The memory of Monday night at Elliot's apartment clung to me like expensive cologne, intoxicating and impossible to ignore. When I arrived at the office, he was already in his glass-walled office, deep in conversation with the finance team. I settled at my desk, pulling up spreadsheets while my mind replayed the taste of his lips. My phone vibrated. Elliot, stop overthinking. Last night was real. Focus on work. We'll talk later. The smile tugged at my lips. How did he always know what I was thinking? The smile vanished when Miranda appeared beside my desk. As the head of HR and the office's most notorious gossip, her presence never meant anything good. Morning, Cassian. Her voice was too cheerful, too curious. How's everything going? Boss keeping you busy with special projects? The word special felt loaded with implication. Just the usual, I replied carefully, keeping my tone light. Nothing out of the ordinary. Her smile sharpened. Interesting. Because I've noticed you've been accessing his office quite frequently over the past 2 weeks. More than any other team member. My throat tightened. That's just for file deliveries and report reviews. Standard procedure. Of course, she said, but her eyes gleamed with suspicion. Just be careful, Cassian. Perception matters in a corporate environment. Favoritism accusations can damage careers, both yours and his. She walked away, leaving me cold despite the office's warm temperature. Were we that obvious? Had people noticed the lingering glances, the subtle tension that seemed to electrify the air whenever we were in the same room? I tried to concentrate on quarterly projections, but the numbers swam before my eyes. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. Elliot, rooftop. 5 minutes. My stomach dropped. The rooftop was abandoned, a smoking area that nobody used since the company implemented its wellness initiative. If he wanted to meet there, something was seriously wrong. I took the stairs to avoid running into colleagues in the elevator. When I pushed open the heavy metal door, wind whipped across the empty space. Elliot stood at the edge, hands braced on the railing, staring out at the city skyline. "Everything all right?" I asked, approaching cautiously. He turned and I saw the tension carved into his features. "Miranda cornered you this morning." It wasn't a question. She made some pointed comments about my office access. I admitted. "She's suspicious." Elliot ran his hand through his perfectly styled hair, disrupting it for the second time since I'd known him. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. We've been so careful but clearly not careful enough. Maybe we should—" I hesitated, the words tasting bitter even before I spoke them. "Maybe we should end this. Before it gets worse." His head snapped toward me. "What?" "Think about it rationally, Elliot. If we're caught, your reputation takes a hit. Mine gets destroyed. I lose my job. You face an ethics investigation. Is this really worth all that risk?" He crossed the space between us in 3 long strides. We stood close, too close for colleagues, but he was careful not to touch me. "Not here, where security cameras might capture us. Listen to me carefully," he said, his voice low and intense. "If I didn't think this was worth the risk, I wouldn't have invited you to my home. I wouldn't have spent the entire night learning everything about you. I certainly wouldn't have kissed you like my life depended on it." My heart hammered against my ribs. "But," he continued, his jaw tightening, "if you're scared, if this is too much, I won't force you to continue. That decision has to be yours." The wind howled around us, carrying the distant sounds of traffic and car horns. I stood frozen between wanting him and wanting to protect us both. "I need time to think," I finally said. He nodded slowly. "Take whatever time you need. Just know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm not changing my mind about you." He left first, disappearing back into the stairwell. I stayed on the rooftop for another 10 minutes, letting the cold air clear my head while my heart argued with my brain. The rest of the week crawled by in agonizing slow motion. We maintained strict professionalism at the office. No lingering glances, no unnecessary conversations. But privately the texts continued. Late-night phone calls where we talked about everything and nothing. Confessions whispered in the darkness. Promises we weren't sure we could keep. By Friday I'd convinced myself we could make this work. We just needed to be smarter, more careful. Then the quarterly celebration happened. The company had rented out the top floor of a downtown bar. Music pounded through speakers while colleagues let loose, drinking and dancing away the stress of the past 3 months. I nursed a beer in the corner, watching the chaos and feeling oddly disconnected from it all. A hand landed on my shoulder. I turned to find Elliot beside me, tie loosened, top button undone, cheeks flushed from alcohol. I'd never seen him drink at work events. He usually maintained his composed facade religiously. "Cassian," he said, his voice carrying that genuine warmth he only showed me in private. "Are you okay?" I whispered, concerned. "How much have you had?" "Not enough," he replied, then louder, "Actually too much. Because I'm tired of this." Panic flared in my chest. "Elliot, people are watching. Let them watch." His voice rose above the music. "I'm exhausted from pretending, from acting like you're just another employee when you're so much more than that. Please." I begged quietly. "Not here. Not like this." But he wasn't listening. The alcohol had dissolved whatever restraint he normally maintained. He grabbed my hand, pulling me closer, and in the sudden lull between songs, his voice carried across the entire floor. "I love you, Cassian. Time stopped. The music cut out. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every single person turned to stare at us, shocked faces, dropped jaws, wide eyes. The secret we'd guarded so carefully for weeks had just exploded in the most public way possible. Miranda stood near the bar, her expression a mixture of vindication and concern. My colleagues gaped at us. The CEO's assistant had her phone out, probably already texting the executive team. Elliot seemed to realize what he'd done. His face paled as sobriety crashed back over him. I couldn't stay there. Couldn't stand in front of everyone while they processed this bombshell. I grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward the emergency exit, shouldering through the crowd. Nobody tried to stop us. They were all too stunned. Outside, in the cool night air of the parking garage, I finally released him. My hands were shaking. My entire body trembled with adrenaline and fear and something that might have been relief. What did you just do? My voice cracked, anger and terror mixing together. You just told the entire office. Everyone knows now. He pressed his palms against his face. I know. God, I know. I drank too much and I lost control and I'm so sorry. Sorry? I nearly shouted. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't save my career. I know, he shouted back. Then quieter, more broken. I know. But Cassian, I'm not sorry about loving you. I'm only sorry about how you found out. I stared at him, this powerful man reduced to vulnerability in a dark parking garage. Do you mean it? I asked. Or was it just the alcohol talking? I mean it, he said without hesitation. I've been in love with you for weeks. Maybe longer. And yes, I announced it in the worst possible way. But the feeling is real. Tears burned my eyes. This was a disaster. A complete catastrophe. But looking at Elliot's face, open, honest, terrified, and hopeful all at once, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. What happens now? I whispered. He straightened his shoulders, some of his usual confidence returning. Now I protect you. I talk to HR first thing Monday. We follow proper protocols. Request reassignment to eliminate any conflict of interest. Whatever it takes to make this right. And us? Us, he repeated, stepping closer. If you still want there to be an us after tonight's mess, then we figure it out. Properly. Openly. No more hiding. I thought about Miranda's suspicions. About the shocked faces in the bar. About how different Monday morning would be. Then I thought about how Elliot looked at me when he thought no one was watching. How he kissed me like I was precious. How he just risked everything in the most reckless, stupid, somehow perfect way. Yeah, I said softly. I still want there to be an us. He pulled me into his arms right there in the parking garage and kissed me with desperate relief. When we finally separated, both of us were crying. We're going to get through this, he promised. I wanted to believe him. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety and damage control. Elliot called me Saturday morning, his voice steady despite the chaos we'd created. I've drafted an email to HR, he said. I'm requesting an emergency meeting for Monday morning. I'll take full responsibility for the inappropriateness of my announcement. It wasn't just you, I protested. I'm equally involved in this relationship, but I'm the one in the position of power. I'm your direct supervisor. The ethical violation falls primarily on me. His tone left no room for argument. I won't let you take the fall from my drunken confession. By Monday morning my stomach was in knots. I arrived early hoping to avoid the inevitable stares and whispers. No such luck. The moment I stepped off the elevator, conversations stopped. People watched me with a mixture of curiosity, judgment, and in a few cases unexpected support. Sarah from accounting gave me a subtle thumbs up. James from IT mouthed good luck as I passed. But most people just stared, processing the revelation that their cold, untouchable boss was in love with one of his subordinates. At 9 o'clock sharp, Elliot and I sat across from Miranda and Richard Chen, the director of human resources. The conference room felt suffocating despite its spacious layout. Mr. Kane, Richard began, his expression professionally neutral. Thank you for bringing this matter to our attention proactively. Can you explain the nature and timeline of your relationship with Mr. Cassian? Elliot sat perfectly straight, every inch the composed executive. The attraction began approximately 6 weeks ago. We acted on those feelings 3 weeks ago. Since then, we've maintained a personal relationship outside of work while keeping our professional interactions appropriate. Until Friday night, Miranda interjected coolly. Until Friday night, Elliot acknowledged. Which was entirely my fault. I had too much to drink and failed to maintain proper boundaries. Cassian had no part in that decision. Richard made notes on his tablet. Mr. Cassian, do you confirm this timeline? Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But I want to be clear, Elliot never leveraged his position inappropriately. Our relationship developed mutually. Any promotions or assignments I've received were based on merit, not favoritism. That may be true, Miranda said, leaning forward. But perception matters. Other employees might believe you received preferential treatment, regardless of reality. That creates a hostile work environment. She wasn't wrong. I'd seen the looks in the hallway. Some people believed I'd slept my way into Elliot's good graces. Which is why, Elliot interjected, I'm prepared to request reassignment. Either transfer Cassian to a different department where I have no supervisory authority, or reassign me to a different team, whatever the company deems most appropriate. Richard and Miranda exchanged glances. We'll need to conduct a thorough investigation, Richard said. Interview other team members to ensure there was no actual favoritism or quid pro quo. But assuming everything checks out, he paused, choosing his words carefully. The company doesn't forbid inter-office relationships. We simply require proper disclosure and elimination of any reporting structure conflicts. Hope flickered in my chest. However, Miranda added, her tone stern. Future violations of professional conduct, public displays, inappropriate behavior during work hours, will result in immediate termination. For both of you, are we clear? Crystal clear, Elliot said. Understood, I echoed. The investigation took a week. HR interviewed every member of our team, reviewed my performance evaluations and project assignments, examined email communications for any sign of inappropriate favoritism. That week was hell. People either avoided me entirely or bombarded me with invasive questions. A few colleagues were genuinely supportive, but most maintained a careful distance, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. Elliot and I communicated only through brief, professional emails. No calls, no texts, nothing that could be used against us if HR decided to dig deeper. I'd never felt more alone. Finally, on Friday afternoon, Richard called us both into his office. The investigation is complete, he announced. We found no evidence of favoritism or ethical violations beyond the disclosure issue. Your professional conduct has been exemplary aside from Friday's incident. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy. However, Richard continued, we cannot allow the current reporting structure to continue. Effective immediately, Mr. Cassian, you're being transferred to the marketing department. Your salary and benefits remain unchanged. Your new supervisor will be Janet Morrison. Marketing. A completely different floor, different projects, different colleagues, but no longer Elliot's direct report. Additionally, Richard said, turning to Elliot, you'll be required to undergo management training on appropriate workplace boundaries. Any future relationships with subordinates must be disclosed immediately, before they develop beyond initial attraction. Understood, Elliot said calmly. Thank you for handling this fairly. We left Richard's office together, walking through the now familiar gauntlet of stairs. When we reached the elevator, Elliot pressed the button and stood beside me, maintaining careful distance. Marketing is a good department, he said quietly. Janet's an excellent supervisor. You'll do well there. Yeah, I agreed, my throat tight with emotion. The elevator arrived. We stepped inside, alone for the first time in a week. Cassian, he said as the doors closed, this doesn't change anything between us. You know that, right? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the same fear I felt reflected in his eyes. Fear that this forced separation might kill whatever we'd built. I know, I said softly. He reached out and squeezed my hand briefly before the elevator stopped at the next floor. When the doors opened and a cluster of executives entered, we were standing on opposite sides of the car, professional and distant. But his touch lingered on my skin like a promise. My last day in Elliot's department felt surreal. Colleagues who'd worked alongside me for months now seemed uncertain how to interact. Some offered genuine congratulations on my transfer, Others maintained awkward silence. At 4 o'clock, Elliot emerged from his office. The entire team happened to be present. Whether by coincidence or design, I wasn't sure. Before Cassian moves to his new role, Elliot announced, his voice carrying that authoritative tone I'd come to know so well. I want to say something publicly. The room went silent. Cassian has been an invaluable member of this team. His analytical skills, attention to detail, and innovative thinking have contributed significantly to our quarterly success. Marketing is fortunate to have him. He turned to me, extending his hand. It was an honor working with you. I stood and shook his hand, firm, professional, appropriate. But his eyes told a different story. Wait for me. This isn't over. I love you. Thank you, sir, I said formally. I learned a lot under your leadership. I love you too. As I packed my desk, my phone vibrated. Elliot, dinner tonight? My place. No more hiding. I smiled, typing quickly before anyone could see. Me? I'll bring wine. Elliot, bring yourself. That's all I need. My new desk in marketing overlooked the city from a different angle. Different view. Different colleagues. Different everything. But when I settled into my chair and checked my phone, Elliot had sent one more message. Elliot, I love you, Cassian. That part doesn't change, no matter what floor you're on. Me? I love you too, Elliot. For the first time in 2 weeks, I breathed easily. The hardest part was over. Now we could finally move forward, complicated, messy, but honest. 3 months had passed since my transfer to marketing. The initial scandal had faded into old news, replaced by newer gossip about budget cuts and potential mergers. Elliot and I settled into a comfortable routine. Professional colleagues in public, devoted partners in private. Tonight marked a special occasion, the 3-month anniversary of our relationship becoming official. Elliot had been cryptic about his plans, insisting only that I meet him at the Hilltop restaurant where we'd shared our first real date. I arrived at 7 sharp, dressed in the navy blazer he'd once mentioned. Looked good on me. The hostess smiled knowingly when I gave Elliot's name, leading me to a private table overlooking the city lights. He was already there, looking devastating in a charcoal suit, candlelight playing across his features. Right on time, he said, standing to pull out my chair. You look incredible. You're not so bad yourself. I replied, warmth spreading through my chest at the familiar intimacy between us. We ordered wine, shared appetizers, talked about everything and nothing. My new projects in marketing, his recent presentation to the board, the ridiculous team-building exercise HR had mandated for next month. Normal couple conversation. Easy. Natural. After the main course, Elliot reached across the table and took my hand. Do you remember the last time we were here? He asked. Of course. You were so nervous you knocked over your water glass. He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. I was terrified you'd realize what a disaster I was and run for the hills. Never crossed my mind, I assured him. Good. He squeezed my hand gently. Because I have something to ask you, and I need you to not run. My heart rate picked up. Elliot, let me finish, he interrupted softly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Time seemed to slow as he opened it, revealing a simple but elegant silver band. I know it's only been 3 months officially, he began, his voice slightly unsteady. But I've known how I felt about you from the moment you walked into my office with coffee stains on your shirt and apologized for being late when you were actually 10 minutes early. I laughed through sudden tears. That felt like a lifetime ago. Cassian, these 3 months have been the best of my life. Not because they were easy, they weren't, but because I got to spend them with you. Learning your quirks, discovering that you sing off-key in the shower and can't cook to save your life, but make the world's best scrambled eggs. Elliot, I whispered, overwhelmed. This isn't an engagement ring, he clarified quickly. I'm not proposing marriage. Not yet. But this is a promise. A promise that I'm in this for the long haul. That I want to build a future with you. Whatever that looks like. That I choose you every single day. He lifted the ring from the box. Will you accept this? Will you choose me too? I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat, so I simply nodded, extending my hand. He slipped the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit as if it had been made specifically for me. Yes. I finally managed. God, yes. I choose you. He stood, pulling me up and into a kiss that tasted like promises and possibility. Around us, other diners noticed and smiled, but I barely registered them. Nothing existed except Elliot's arms around me and the weight of the ring on my finger. When we finally separated, both of us were crying. "Take me home?" I asked softly. Nothing would make me happier. Back at his apartment, which had slowly become our apartment over the past months, we shed our formal clothes for comfortable ones. I changed into one of his old college t-shirts while he made coffee in the kitchen. I found him standing at the counter, staring at the brewing pot with an expression of deep contentment. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, wrapping my arms around him from behind. "How different everything is from 6 months ago," he said, turning in my embrace to face me. "How much better?" I rested my head against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. "Remember when you first touched my collar?" How could I forget? That was the moment I knew I was completely screwed. I'd spent months maintaining professional distance, and then one crooked collar destroyed all my carefully constructed walls. "Best crooked collar in history," I teased. He kissed the top of my head. The beginning of everything. We took our coffee to the couch, settling into our usual positions, my feet in his lap, his hand absently stroking my ankle. "Comfortable, right?" "I want to talk about something serious," Elliot said after a few minutes of peaceful silence. I tensed slightly, but his expression remained calm. "Next year," he continued, "my lease is up on this place. I've been thinking, what if we didn't renew it?" My heart skipped. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we find somewhere new. Together. A place that's ours from the start, not mine that you moved into. What do you think?" The enormity of what he was proposing hit me. Living together, officially, not just spending nights at each other's places, but building a real home together. "I think," I said slowly, "that sounds perfect. Terrifying, but perfect." He grinned, relief evident on his face. "We'll take it slow. Look at places together. Make sure we find something we both love. No rush. Except you just put a promise ring on my finger and ask me to move in with you," I pointed out. "That's a pretty specific timeline." "Fair point," he conceded, laughing. "But the offer stands. No pressure. We go at whatever pace feels right." I set down my coffee and moved to straddle his lap, framing his face with my hands. "Elliot Kane, I would love to find a home with you. Start building our future properly. Make this official in every way that matters." He kissed me then, deep, thorough, filled with promise. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes," he admitted quietly. "Good," I whispered back. "Because I love you just as terrifyingly much." 1 year later, we stood in a small chapel surrounded by close friends and family. My sister was crying happy tears in the front row. Elliot's mother beamed with pride. Even Miranda had shown up, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. The officiant droned on about love and commitment, but I barely heard the words. All I could see was Elliot, perfectly composed as always except for the tears tracking down his cheeks. "Do you, Elliot Kane, take Cassian to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," he said, voice steady and sure. "And do you, Cassian, take Elliot to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," I replied, my own voice thick with emotion. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss." Elliot cupped my face gently, just like he had that first time in his office when everything changed. "Your collar's crooked," he whispered, barely audible over the applause. I laughed through my tears. "Better fix it then." He adjusted it carefully, his touch igniting the same electricity it had a year and a half ago. Then he kissed me, soft, sweet, filled with every promise we'd made and all the ones still to come. When we walked back down the aisle as newlyweds, I caught sight of our reflection in the chapel windows. Two men who'd taken the biggest risk of their lives, and found everything they'd been searching for. The beginning had been messy, the middle had been complicated. But the ending, or rather this new beginning, was absolutely perfect.